Again, if you're just joining us, hey, good to see everybody. I'm Brian Neal, the founder of Blind Zebra, and I'm with Ariel today. And we're going to be talking obviously about sales coaching, both of our favorite topics. Here with Ariel, CEO and co-founder of Second Nature. I'm CEO, and I'm not CEO. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get in huge trouble. Ariel, do you know who our CEO is? It's my wife. Oh my gosh, I am dead that I just said I'm
yeah,
CEO.
now you're
I
in trouble.
Dead. I am dead. I might come to Tel Aviv to spend the night, man.
You should. I know your wife.
Oh boy, exactly. You talked to her. Thank you. That's great. That's great. Hopefully, you're getting a kick out of this because now I'm nervous all of a sudden. So, okay, let's rock and roll, shall we? Ready, Ariel?
Let's do it.
If you haven't said hi yet in the chat room, please do so. We're glad you're here. We're going to be interacting with you through the chat room. We also just have a couple of slides, but mostly Ariel and I are just going to riff about sales coaching today. So first of all, I always start these webinars and engagements by saying the greatest gift you can give a stranger is your time and attention. And so we're thankful that you're giving us your time and attention today. And it will be our hope that when you leave here, you are a little bit better off than when you got here. And that can be anything from knowing that I'm going to get in trouble by my wife for saying that I was the CEO, because I'm not. Or hopefully better than that, though, you get something very useful and tactical that you can take away as a sales leader to implement in your own personal sales coaching program. And that's what we really want for you more than anything today. Okay. So just to give a brief agenda for you, and I'll tell you, and Ariel and I both, we have a very similar style. We like to just riff on things and kind of go with the flow versus showing you, 60 slides, that sort of thing. I also write on whiteboards, and I'll always read what's on my whiteboard. So in case you can't read it or don't have me penned, you don't have to squint or anything. But we'll do just a quick intro of the two of us, just a little bit about our backgrounds and our own personal stories about sales coaching and why we think it's so important. We're going to do a little poll just to see if you have any guidance on what a really good standardized coaching program can do in terms of revenue, because that's really what matters in the end. We can skill up and coach all day, but if it doesn't turn into more or better revenue, it's kind of what's the point sort of thing. And then we're going to play Oprah for those of you who aren't from the United States and don't know who Oprah is. I think most of the globe does. Ariel, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Most of the globe knows Oprah, but I always like to clarify in case someone outside the U.S. doesn't know. Oprah's a very, very famous, very influential person here in the United States and in the world. And she has this thing called her favorite things, Oprah's favorite things. She always does in her magazine what her favorite things are. And Ariel and I are going to tell you about our favorite things relative to sales coaching. We're each going to give you 3 things. And hopefully from that list of 6, you'll be able to take at least 1, if not 2 or 3 away to implement today. So we do want to start. I'm going to actually start in the chat room just real quick. We want this to be a service to you. And so I want you to think for a moment in your own role as a sales coach or a sales leader. And some of you have big sales teams. Some of you are chief revenue officers and VPs of sales. Some of you are just getting your teeth cut in a new role. Some of you may be a salesperson that gets coached. But what we want to start with is your view of what you'd like to get some outside perspective and insight on. And so I'm going to ask you now, if you could go to the chat room, and I want you to think of any sort of question relative to sales coaching that you'd love us to address in our own experiences and the things that we've seen with our own clients relative to sales coaching. So example would be, how often should I coach my people? Another question might be, how do I coach someone that's not coachable? Anything at all that you want some outside perspective on, if you could now be kind enough to put that in the chat room, and that'll kind of drive some of our content as we go now. And I told everyone, I know some of you are typing, you're thinking, anything question relative to sales coaching, pop it in the chat room, and we'll watch that thing here light up in just a moment too. And I told them that if I had to bribe people that I would. And so we'll watch and see how that goes. Okay. So put that in the chat room. Anything relative to sales coaching that you'd like to know, hear about, learn about, anything at all. How often? There we go. Now we're rolling. This is how it usually goes. How do I get people to make changes when they're busy? Oh, I love, that's one of my favorite things to talk about. I'll soapbox that one. How to scale it effectively. Very good. Anyone be able to create excitement from their sales teams with coaching growth? This is great. Very good. That's fantastic. Yeah. Keep putting them in there just like that. Okay. Because that to us, we have this phrase at Blind Zebra, at least we say people support what they help create. And you're helping us create the webinar. So that should make it more supportive, because you're sort of telling us, hey, here's what we'd like some insight on. So we'll come back, keep rolling that in the chat room if you could. best practices. And these are the things we might not hit all of them, but we're going to try to hit as many as we can. Perspective on leaderboards, scoreboards. I love it. Seen a lot out. This is a no activity. Oh, discourages people. Very good.
Interesting.
Yeah, very. Yeah. Getting buy-in from ownership, coaching versus or on sales cadence. Yes. That would be the activity behavior coaching stuff. Very good, Gay. Love that. Keep it up. Now's your chance. Anything you want to ask us or get outside perspective would be wonderful. And then sometimes people from the group will have great ideas too. Ariel, I'm sure we both kind of see the world the same way. Usually the better ideas come from the chat room, not from me, but and then I learn it, steal it, teach it to other people. It's great, right? Just happened to me running all my calls. So let's do it. Ariel, why don't you start, if you don't mind, let's talk about your story with sales coaching in general. And then I'll tell you kind of mine and we'll get into some of the deeper content here.
Let's do it. So again, my name is Ariel Hitron. I'm co-founder CEO of Second Nature. And before that, like in my background, I've been in product for many years, product marketing, and kind of my team was responsible to create collateral for the sales team. So in my mind, I was saying, hey, here's the best content out there. Here's the playbook. Here's the battle cards. Here are all the information that you need. And now you just need to read that and you'll make the sale and you're done, right? Yeah. As simple as that, right? The content was so great in my mind. And then kind of I took a shift in my role and I've kind of turned into leading a sales team. It was a small sales team of about 25 people. And all of a sudden I was looking back at the same content that I was creating. And I was looking at it and I said, this is like complete useless. It's complete shit. Like, nobody can use that. It's really not effective. Nobody reads like features and benefits to a prospect. And I think that's how I came into the space of sales coaching, kind of with this realization that I was getting at it a completely wrong way and thinking about how can I help my team get better at what they're doing? How can I get them to be more effective and to sell more? And as a leader, when you have a big enough team, it's like the impact that you have is really limited eventually, right? You can sit with one person or another person and do a little bit of there and go on a road with some people or go on calls with them. But actually making an impact on a large organization, it's hard. So that's what kind of led me to think about this process of coaching and later on speaking with other organizations with much larger teams and understanding the vast majority of problems that people have in creating this kind of consistent message. But let me put a pause here kind of and turn it over to you, Brian.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's I love Ariel's story. And we were prepping for this. He said this, and I was hoping he would say this is shit because that's what he said. And that's so I was the person reading all his stuff. So I started my career at Procter & Gamble. And Procter & Gamble has wonderful training. It's a great, huge company. Again, if you're not from the US, P&G's worldwide, global. They make consumer goods. 10% of the stuff you see in a grocery store is a P&G brand. And I was in the field. I was a field salesperson. And this is in the 90s. And so this is before computers and everything and all the digital electronic stuff we have these days. And so we got, and at P&G, or I'm sure you can relate with other companies, we had acronyms for everything. There was everything. You could speak a whole sentence in an acronym. Well, one of the acronyms we had was an AFTRB. And that's what you got at training that you product people made. You made us an AFTRB. And an AFTRB stands for another frickin' 3-ring binder. But we didn't say frickin'. It was another frickin' 3-ring binder. And it was the same, and then we just got each training session. I'd go through the training. I'd read all of Ariel's product stuff. I'd say, this is great. Thanks a bunch. I'd go back to my home office. I'd take the AFTRB, stick it on the shelf with the others, never touch it again. Never touch it again. When I left P&G, I literally probably shouldn't have done this. I didn't know any better, but I took all that. I know it's confidential. I took it all out in a dumpster in my apartment complex and threw it all in the dumpster. And that was what sucked about it was some of my best friends were Ariel. They were my product team. I loved them. They were great. They're super smart. They were smarter than I was. But the way that knowledge came to me and the way that it was used was way, way apart from what reality was. And I found it to be very, very useless. And then therefore the tools that we used and the process we used was useless. It just did not work because it was so distant from reality. So I swore when I got to sales coaching, I would always, always work to be in touch with reality. I'd always work my own deals. I'd do everything I taught. I'd screw up like everybody else. I'd learn from it and try to do it better next time. which is my view of sales coaching. So.
Absolutely. And I think that, just to pick up on that, like there's a gap between marketing and sales eventually, right? Product marketing, marketing, it's all the same. And while marketing sometimes thinks in product and features and benefits and the needs, maybe, sales many times thinks in conversations.
Yes.
So you have brief moments of interactions. Sometimes it's over an email or a chat. Most of the times, if they're impactful, they're either in a phone call, a Zoom meeting, or an in-person meeting, but it's a moment in time where two people converse. And how effectively can you manage that conversation? That makes a whole lot of a difference. And I think that that's the gap that's typically between how marketing thinks, or how me personally, how I used to think about here's the features and the benefits and the objections to all, versus how to navigate a conversation effectively, which is what we're focusing on right now, especially in the realms of coaching.
Yes, no doubt. It's that it's in, most people don't think about that. The hinge point of that, if you took, like two cones that came together, all the feature, benefit, product attributes, all the stuff on the sales side, then you have on the customer side all the problems, issues, goals, things, and they all come together in a conversation. And then I want you all on this call, in this webinar, thinking about how much time do I spend preparing for the conversation itself, practicing the conversation. You spend all this time putting your slide deck together. Do you practice the actual conversation? Think about, we talked about this too. So I'm a musician and I'm an NFL referee. So if you're not in the United States, NFL, national football, it's American football. It's a pretty big deal. And the practice to play ratio is obscene. The amount of practice that goes into in American National Football League relative to play is insane. How much more they practice versus they play. It's just, it'll blow your mind. Think of like any professional musician. Think of any performance art, any artist. All they practice. Yet in selling, in business, we don't practice the conversation. We don't practice the art, right? We just go do it. And it's less than optimal, to say the least. So
absolutely.
So let's talk about the case for coaching, because the other thing, and this is good since I met Ariel and Second Nature, that's got my head spinning in a good way, because I'm a sales coach and I always measure revenue. What I've never thought about was, what can I anticipate from a standardized coaching program in terms of revenue? So I was interested and didn't know the answer. And we're going to see if you know the answer, right, Ariel? So we're going to do a poll now. Let's do a poll. We have a poll prepared for you. So go ahead and take it away with the poll, Ariel.
Yeah, so here's the poll, and you can read it yourself. The main question here is, what do you think a structured coaching program, how could that impact your revenue in the organization? And we put there 60% of the reps, so maybe not everyone, but how would it impact 60% of your reps?
Mm-hmm. So everybody vote now. Can you see the responses, Ariel?
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody's voting. Yeah, he's watching the responses come in. Then we're going to see what the.
That's really interesting. The responses are coming at a fast pace.
I love it. Yes, as they should. Everybody's voting.
Everybody's voting. A few people still need to finish.
Yes.
This is really interesting, guys. I'm going to show it in a minute. Finish up your voting. Let's do like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're ending the poll.
Yes.
And now let's share the results with everyone.
Yes. Yeah.
So look at that.
Yes.
So it seems like we have a nicely kind of layout graph between 0 impact and 18% impact. And it seems also that we have a well-educated audience in here, because I think you guys are spot on. Okay, it goes for what the research shows is that your star reps, your top performers, they would benefit from coaching as well, but not as much. Your laggards or your worst performers, sometimes it wouldn't help them either, just because they're so far behind. But your core performers, your 60%, those can get up to 18% increase in their revenue, in their numbers, in achieving their numbers, just by a structured coaching program that helps them kind of overcome the areas where they're weak, whether it's on their skills, whether it's on their product knowledge, and it also is very much important to do it in a personalized manner. But as you can see, it's an amazing impact, and it seems like the audience here agrees with that as well. So this is great.
Yes. And you have fun with stats too. And then you see like 39% people said 18, but then that means that 2/3 or 60% of the people thought it was less than that.
Yeah,
Still a big number,
yeah.
right? I was pleasantly surprised by this. And here's how I've been thinking about this. So if you're sitting there listening to this going, okay, how does this impact me? Really start to put those numbers into play. So for easy math, just take a sales team of 10 to make it easy. Let's say we're only going to impact 6 of them at all. So set 4 aside. Now we have 6. Take their revenue. Let's pretend those 6 are your middle performers. So on average, they do $1 million each for easy math, $6 million. And then I put a standardized coaching program for these people. I'm going to bump every individual one of those up by 18%. So I'm going to take 6 million of revenue for this and then bop that up by 18%, which I'm bad at math, but that's going to be, call it about $2 million, right? 18% of it's a great at scale. It's insane. At scale, it's insane. The numbers are insane. Anyone to take and that's just from coaching. Forget all the other good stuff you do. That's the other thing to remember that people forget. This is just coaching. If you lob coaching onto, better business planning, better product releases, all those sorts of things, you have, an exponential impact over time. It's really, really cool, I think.
Absolutely. So why don't we speak a little bit about like how do you actually turn that idea of structured coaching, which is obviously very impactful, into practice. So if that's okay, Brian, I'd run through a few slides.
Yeah, go ahead.
Michelle from my team was adamant about me going through slides, and I promised her I would. So, I'm going to do it now, Michelle.
All right, here we go.
So hopefully you can see my slides now.
Yeah. And we joked, see the little the title slide there? Like I have a sport coat on and a dress shirt and Ariel's in a t-shirt, and then we switched roles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Casual today, right? Dressed up. So whoopsie daisy.
I've seen the picture so much dressed up. So thinking about this, like this is kind of going back to the beginning of our conversation of what I've seen with myself and with other kind of organizations, large and small, that sometimes when it comes from the top, when executives think about, okay, so how can we roll out a new strategy? How can we increase the amount of sales? And the solution they typically come by with is they say, we're going to do a new product. And that new product is going to be so amazing, everybody would buy it. Or a new message, or a new pricing, or enter a new market, or run a new sales methodology, or just hire a bunch of people. Or this is my personal favorite for running a sales team. Why can't you make everybody an A player? Just make them all A players and then it'll be done. We'll hit our goals, right? As an executive. But eventually, in order to make a difference, you actually have to improve the conversations, which is the moment of truth when the salesperson is speaking with the prospect. And in order to make that change, you have to roll out a structured coaching program. And let me just kind of share what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about those structured coaching programs. It starts with defining a goal. So understanding what you're trying to achieve, then defining different coaching scenarios, then delivery to your audience. If you have 10 people team, then to your 10 people. If you have 1,000 or 2,000, then to 2,000 people. And then measure how do you make this improvement. And it's interesting to see when you come to sales leaders and you ask them, okay, so what are your business goals? What would you like to achieve? Would you like to open more opportunities? Would you like to close larger deals? Do you want to increase your win rates? Do you want to reduce the time to close? Maybe you have a strategic goal of entering a new market. Like, what's most important to you? What's the priority? And the typical response from a VP of sales is all of the above. I want everything here, right? Everything. But you can't coach for everything. So you really have to pick the goal that you're coaching for. So say, for example, the goal is to close larger deals. I just want to walk through the thought process of how do you get to a structured coaching program. So say, and I took the example of a cybersecurity company, if they want to close larger deals, what would that mean, right? You're breaking it down a little bit. So maybe it's selling to the C-suite. Maybe it's doing a deeper discovery. Maybe it's positioning an entire suite instead of just a point solutions. Maybe it's better differentiation from competition so that you could sell more products and a complete solution within your own tool. So you really have to start with the goals, then start breaking those down. So say now you want to do the coaching, you go one level deeper and you say, okay, why don't we position a solution? So now you're saying, okay, now I'm going to do a role play, or I'm going to do a coaching on solution positioning. And there's different ways you can coach for that. You can go on a call with your reps. You can listen to their recorded calls. You can do a lot of things, but if you want to do it top down in a structured way that would drive change consistently, you really have to think about those scenarios and how you put the rep in that moment of truth of having a conversation. And a good thing to think about for each and every conversation in your sales process is, what information do I expect the rep to discover in this conversation? And if it's a qualification call or a demo call or a discovery call or a negotiation call, whatever that call is and what stage you are in the sales cycle, you might have different information to discover. You might have different information to share. You might have different objections to overcome, and you might have different conversation goals. And that is also can be incremental. So if you're doing right now, just you have to book a meeting. If you're an SDR, your conversation goal is to book a meeting. You need to discover a bit of information, share as little information as you can, uncover or overcome any objection that come up in order to book that meeting. If you're in a closing call, then that's a very different scenario. So really think about the scenario that you're building it for within the sales cycle. Let me put kind of a pause here because I don't want to take the entire thing and make it a presentation, but hopefully this gives like a sense. I did Michelle I did my duties for her, but hopefully that gives a sense of how we're thinking about the structured rollout of coaching. And that's what we've seen with some of our marquee customers as well. So yes, large customers with thousands of sales reps up to much, much smaller with tens or hundreds who need to do this in a very structured way. But I think it can be beneficial for everyone, even if you have like a 5-people team, that will be beneficial.
This is what I love about this, Ariel, is I love the specificity of knowing what we're coaching on and why we're coaching it. So if you're listening to this, a takeaway from this is you ask yourself, when I do a coaching session, do I and or my rep or my account manager, AE, or whoever it is, do we both know what we're practicing right now and why we're practicing it? And you can practice if you've ever been in a play or if you've seen a movie shot, they shoot movies out of sequence, right? So you could, the reason I like that as an analogy is you don't have to be in sequence in your practice session. You can practice the negotiation call when everything's gone great and they're ready to go and they're kind of at the now you're going contract and so you say, okay, we're going to pick up the scene mid-scene and we're going to do nothing but practice the negotiation with these 3 main resistance points we tend to hear. And then we're going to work through our process. Okay, ready, go. So it doesn't have to be beginning to end. You can pick up a sales call, conversation, practice session in the middle of the call. You don't even have to say, because everyone likes to start the practice session or the role play and go, okay, let's go ahead and start. Okay, ring, ring. Hey, Ariel, how are you? It's Brian. Hey, Brian, nice to see you today. You don't have to start. Everyone starts every practice session that way. It's so silly. Like, you don't have to do that, right? You don't have to do that. Yeah, you start right in the middle.
Absolutely. And I think also in those terms, like it's all about the preparation. Because what happens in many organizations, obviously none of those who are listening to us right now, but in many other organizations is that you go into a call and the sales manager is kind of asking the rep, so what's going on with your pipe? How are things going? Are the opportunities advancing? What's going on with this deal, with that deal? And at the end of that half an hour conversation, the rep goes out of the room and the manager says, I did a great coaching session right now. And the rep the rep goes out and he says, well, I was just kind of giving a pipe review and a pipe audit, and that's it. So it's really important to distinguish between the two, and then take it even a step further, saying, okay, I want to coach now. It seems like I was able to identify what would be the biggest impact in my coaching. If we have a problem with opening new opportunities, with closing, with selling this product, with what have you, and this specific rep would have that. Now I'm going to prepare for this. And this is easier when you have a larger team, or if you have like an expert coach that comes in, but you have to be prepared and you have to give enough context, because otherwise you come into a role play and there's not enough context and you don't know what you're talking about. And then it becomes really shallow and awkward sometimes. So building it up and providing the context, who's the buyer, what happened before this conversation, if this conversation number 5 in your sales process, what happened before that, what's the goal of these conversations, and then what is the sheet for the seller and the sheet for the buyer that they have to know coming into this discussion. Right. So it's hard. It takes some time to prep that and to create that, but once you do that, then you have an asset you can use repeatedly with many reps. And I think part of the trick is to identify where's the biggest bang for the buck, what's the lever that we want to pull in order to create behavior change, right? Because eventually we're trying to change behaviors.
Think too, I love what Ariel's saying, what you're saying here is, but think about cataloging scenarios and catalog them from real life. Don't catalog them like, hey, let's make up some scenarios. Let's pretend that. Don't do that. They're right in front of you. They're all the deals you've dealt with. Catalog those scenarios and those become little play sheets, right? And then what you can do is you can say, here's exactly what's great with, we've got Zoom recordings. If you use Gong or Chorus or something that records your calls, you've got it all there. Use those as the scenarios. What you do is play the real call, hear what the buyer says, hit pause and go, okay, you're the salesperson, respond. Now we're practicing real life, right? It's real life because that was a real call.
Absolutely. But I would go one step even before that. Like, and it depends on the size of the team that you have, but I would go in your Salesforce or HubSpot or your CRM and try and understand where are the biggest gaps right now. Is there, for example, one rep is closing too small of a deals. Why is that? Because they're not selling all of the product lines. He knows only how to sell this product, but he doesn't know how to sell the other ones. So this rep, Joe, needs some coaching on how to sell these other products. And that is apparent from Salesforce. You don't need to listen to his calls for that. You can see that he's not selling these products, right? Someone else might have a problem moving from discovery to demo because there's a dip there. Someone else doesn't have enough openings, so he needs to prospect more. So really tune your coaching. Sometimes we call it data-driven coaching. So tune your coaching to the data needs of that salesperson. And then if you have a large team, then the challenge becomes how do you deliver that at scale? Because everyone's busy, right? The managers are busy. The sales reps are busy. In the chat room.
One of the questions is about busy. I love that one. This is really good. So what I'm hearing you say, Ariel, is the skill-based coaching comes after the outcome-driven coaching. In other words, I start with outcomes that I'm after, then I go, what skill is causing or not causing the outcomes that we want, right?
Absolutely. And I think really I think that also, like, sometimes people separate between skills and knowledge. Right. So skills would be, how do you handle objections in general? How do you run discovery? Can you ask provocative questions in order to get responses? And knowledge would be, can you actually differentiate from competitor X? It's very specific to your business. But in reality, in a conversation, nobody makes a separation between those two. Nobody cares. Like the prospect, the outcome would not change if you can do an amazing work in handling objections, but you don't know the actual answer.
Yes, exactly.
then it wouldn't be. And the opposite is also true. If you take people who are coming in to sales from product or from engineering, they're an experts on the technicalities, but they don't have the skills to make the sale. So you both of those things and coach for both
Yes.
of those things.
That's great. Says the guy coming from the product side of the house, right? But I know you
Yeah, absolutely.
you got skills now, right? Okay, so let's go through some these will be like tips or our favorite things relative to coaching. So I've got 3 written down. There may be more. Maybe we'll both hit one. So I've got mine on my whiteboard. I'm going to read one off, and then I'll pass it to you, Ariel. Is that cool? We'll go back and forth. Okay. What you're listening for here, the rest of you who are listening to this, you're listening for takeaways. You're listening for things to do. I've already heard a couple to-dos. If I were you, I would make a to-do and accountability from this call today that I'm going to catalog at least 20 real-time scenarios to serve as coaching. Second might be I'm going to go audit my Salesforce.com Q3 results and see if I can drive individual coaching programs for each of my individual reps based on the things Ariel talked about. Okay, so this first one that I'm going to give you is it's just a complete mental shift of the whole idea. And I heard in the chat room, I didn't hear, I read in the chat room, this whole thing about groans. Hey, we're going to role play today. Oh my God, I'm a grown up. I don't need to role play. I'm a grown up. I know what I'm doing. I don't need to do this. I just want you to think about the whole, here's this is crazy, but I want you to do this. I don't want you to ever say the word role play the rest of your life. Just don't say the word. That word is part of the scary word. That's the one that conjures up the ickiness I've found. Okay. I want you to think about this being, and I'll read some of these to you. These are practice sessions. These are rehearsals. This is a sporting analogy. We use this a lot in football and other sports. This is a scrimmage. So all of our clients, we have calendared scrimmage sessions. So I just got off of one today. It was called scrimmage and film review. Scrimmage and film review. That's what it's called. We do scrimmage and film review. We do practice. Okay. We rehearse. Do not say role play. That makes people really, really uncomfortable. I know that doesn't seem like a big deal. It's a huge deal. It is a huge deal. Okay. So just think about changing your whole mentality about that. And then I'm going to add to that. I want you to think about as a takeaway today, my goal is to create a practice culture where we embrace practice. If you follow me around in practice in the NFL, the best players take the most practice reps. They push the rookies aside and the veterans take the reps because the veterans know how important it is to practice. And ask yourself, how can I create that culture? And one of the ways to do that is to make this whole the scrimmage practice session an enjoyable, safe process. Like we always say practice, and I usually go first because I'll screw it all up. I'll say, look, this is practice. We will screw it all up, guaranteed. I'll stop right in the middle of a session. We have a thing, we call it timeout. Here's the thing you can take away. All right, now we're practicing, practice, talk. I get stuck. I'm frozen. I go, timeout. I'm stuck. Okay. You can do that in practice. You can't do that. If I'm selling Ariel and he's the co-founder, CEO of his company, I can go, timeout. I'm not sure what to say next. And that's when you get yourself in trouble because that happens in your brain, but then you BS your way. And all right. So be comfortable taking a timeout in a scrimmage or rehearsal or practice session. Okay. That's my first thing. Just changing the whole concept of it, making it something we look forward to do versus something we have to do that sucks. Ariel.
Absolutely. So I'll pick up on your sports analogy, even though
right.
I'm like, I know much less about sports than you do. And I'll go with the baseball. And I'm thinking about the batting cage as an analogy, right? So you might have your game tape with a recording of a call, and that's all fine. You can watch the recording and make some markings on that recording and kind of learn from it. But to actually get into a habit, to actually make something your second nature, you have to practice it and practice it and practice it. And our concept is the concept of the batting cage. So you get into the batting cage and you practice those curveballs, those hard balls, those softballs, all of them. And you don't feel embarrassed because of the machine that throws those balls at you, right? It becomes embarrassing if you have to do this role play in an auditorium in front of 50 people who are sitting there and you're the only thing that's between them and their lunch. Then it's become embarrassing, right? Yeah. But if you're at the privacy of your own room and you're just practicing with a batting machine, then it's much more comfortable. So for me, it's about not feeling embarrassed. I'm definitely with you with that, and practicing all of different tactics until they become really fluent for you.
Love that. I love the bat because what I love about the batting cage, especially if you've got kids that play baseball, I remember driving my kids to the batting cages. I have to stand there and watch. And I'm not like a coachy dad. I'm not like on their tails or whatever. I stay in the car. But once they're older and they can drive, they go to the batting cage by themselves. Here's what's great. You don't even have to tell anyone you're doing it. You can practice, but these days with Zoom, this is an old thing you can do. Have your salespeople, you can start a Zoom on your own. And if you use Teams or anything else, that's great. But you can start a Zoom, you hit record and just practice the opening and then go back and watch it. You don't have to tell anybody you did it. I say this all the time. Or almost everyone has a smartphone. You have voice memos on here. Record yourself leaving a voicemail and then just listen to it back and then delete it. You don't have to ever do it again. But creating a culture where people feel comfortable doing that, I think is really important. And you have so many tools to practice with these days, right? And this is where you want to screw up and test new things. All right, here's my second one. Okay. And I just wrote this little, after Ariel said this, and we did not rehearse this, by the way. we both wanted to go in cold. So I don't know what he was going to say. He didn't know what I was going to say. This is great. So this is a way I wrote down this little phrase, shrink the room. Shrink the room. Because what Ariel said is so true. People do not want to be embarrassed in front of their peers. Right. And everybody that watches someone blow a role play, which you're not going to say anymore, in front of their peers, I said all that on purpose, cringes. They cringe. We don't want the room to feel that way. We want the room to feel uplifted and good. So the best way to do that is to shrink the room first. So I'm going to teach you this little concept we use called a peer coaching triad. Peer coaching triad. So if you have a sales team of 3 or 30 or 100, doesn't matter, especially if you're remote. Put everyone in groups of 3. Groups of 3, that's a triad. Allow them to practice in a small group and they take turns. And the 3 roles in the triad are buyer, seller, observer. Buyer, seller, observer. And what you find happens here is when everyone plays all 3 roles in the session. So you're going to break out, you're going to practice this one segment of the sales call, and you're going to go, everyone's going to take a turn going. You're going to go into triads. Buyer, seller, observer. The buyers and seller are going to have their little interaction, their little practice, and the observer is going to give feedback, right? Plus and minus. And then they're going to rotate. Right? And what happens here is the observers, you observe your peers, you will learn as much as the person who's practicing when you can observe someone else. Also, in the next 5 minutes, you get to do the same thing. So I get to observe Ariel doing his thing and I give him some feedback, plus and minus. Then I go and he gives me feedback. And then our other person goes. So think about implementing a process. This is also one of the best ways to scale this process because everyone wants to go, okay, we got a team of 50. Okay, who's next? Ariel and Brian, you 2 are next. We come up on the stage. 48 people are watching. They're all cringing. That's not scalable. Bust everybody out into little triads, right? You do 17 little triads, maybe one group of 4, and have them do buyer, seller, observer, and just rotate around. You get the same info, all that stuff done in less than 10 minutes. Then come back and say, okay, feedback for the big group. What did you get out of your training session? Your triad, Ariel, oh, this is great. Brian said this. I stole that. That was a great idea. I loved how it sounded, whatever. Coaching triad, do that. Shrink the room.
Absolutely. And just pick up on that. I'm going to pick up whatever Brian says because he's awesome. So.
Stop.
The triad concept. So we work with SAP as an example, and they use this triad concept, and I think it works great. And then to augment that, what we're doing is think about the triad of 1 almost. So you see here a picture of Jenny, who's our virtual coach, and that's what our software does. So I have to talk a little bit about that. But what she does is she plays 2 roles in that triad. So she plays the buyer and the observer. She has 2 roles in that. So she might go in a conversation that's a voice, free-flowing conversation, and she'll come by and she'll play the buyer. And you can ask her questions, and she'll ask questions back, and so on and so forth. And this would go for anywhere from 60 seconds to 25 minutes, depending on the scenario that is set up. And then once it's done, she'll turn her hat or her voice or her image, and she'll say, okay, now let me play the observer. Here are the things, Ariel, that you've done wrong. You didn't acknowledge an objection. You didn't talk about the differentiation from this and that. You start mumbling and fumbling on your words when faced with this thing. You say a lot of, it's sort of like, which shows that you didn't have a clue what you're talking about. So this is kind of exactly, we took the point that Brian was making about this triads and thought, how do you scale that now from 50 to 1,000 or to 2,000? and we're kind of working with these organizations to try and automate some of that. So right on. Having said that, like working with people is definitely the best thing that you can do. So as long as you can have those triads and those partners, definitely use them.
Yes. And it's great too at scale. And I've kind of heard Jenny talk, and you know, she's very nice, but she's very direct. I love it. It's really good. She's fantastic. Okay, last thing, and Ariel already talked about this, but this is my third favorite thing. And I'll start with this. So I stole this from, I adapted it. There's a book called The Six Thinking Hats. It was written in the 80s, and it's really for leadership teams to parallel think about a problem that they're having. It's called The Six Thinking Hats. I adapted that for sales leadership. So I teach my clients the 6 sales management hats. One of the hats is the coaching hat. And what I want you to take away from today's session, and Ariel said it earlier, exactly how it happens. You have to be intentional about wearing the coaching hat when it's a coaching session, and you have to stay in that lane. You cannot bleed over into the other hats. For example, some of the other hats are the manager hat. That's the pipeline review thing. The cheerleader hat. Come on, gang. It's going to, you know, if you're going to be in a coaching session, it's a coaching session. You're not talking about pipe. You're not talking about deal flow. You're not talking about vision and goals for 2022. If Ariel and I have a coaching session, I'm the sales manager. I've got my coaching hat on for 30 minutes. All I'm doing is coaching. That's it. Scenario-based coaching. Giving feedback, practice again, rinse, repeat, that sort of thing. We're not bleeding out to any opportunities at all. None whatsoever. No deal strategy. And if I see a mistake that sales leaders make, it's exactly what Ariel said way earlier in the session. We're having a coaching session, and I'm like, okay, so what do you got going, Ariel? You got, how's your pipe looking? Okay, good. Yeah, hey, that congrats on another deal. Where's this one at? Yeah, okay, so yeah, maybe you want to give them a call. Why don't you, give a call this afternoon, see if they want to get together. I can hop in and, be your executive sponsor. Okay, good. High five. Good job, dude. Later. And he tells his boss, the manager, I'm like, hey, I had a kick-ass coaching session with Ariel just then. Ariel's like, I didn't get any coaching. You got read to, right? That's what happens. So be intentional. If you're going to coach. If you're not going to coach, don't also have a coaching session when you've got your manager's hat on. That's when you're doing pipe review. That's when you're doing Salesforce.com behavior KPIs. That's your manager hat. Be very definitive with that this is a coaching session, coaching hat, leave it on, hard stop when you're done.
Awesome. I think that's awesome. So I think that I want to loop back in. I know that we're running almost short on time. Maybe we'll have time for Q&A, and I'll talk about one of the favorite things that also came by a few times in the thread with the Linda, I think, and others about the ROI. How do you measure the ROI of coaching? How do you measure, how do you get executive support for a coaching program, and so on and so forth, right? And I think that's part of my favorite things because it's hard. It's hard to measure ROI. And I think that here's my perspective of it. I think that if you try to say, this is how I measure the ROI. I did some coaching sessions, and the sales of the entire organization, this is a multi-billion-dollar organization, went up by 3% because of the coaching sessions. That's going to be a very hard sell. Nobody would believe it. They say, well, you're right, you did some coaching sessions or coaching program even, but you also did 3 new products. We acquired a company, we changed the pricing, we entered a new market. So you can't really attribute any of the success to your specific coaching. I think that the secret to showing an ROI is really identifying the scenarios you want to coach for, and start with ROI in mind. So start with the data, right? If you're seeing in the data right now, whether it's Salesforce, HubSpot, or whatnot, and saying, look, like our conversion rates from discovery to demo is too low versus another team, or versus the industry standard, or we're actually not selling enough of this product, or we're not successful in having C-level conversations and closing larger deals. Well, have those, whatever that might be, identify it in advance. So start there. Then don't be afraid to put a goalpost, right? And that's the hard part. The reason why you can't show an ROI because nobody wants to commit up front. So put the goalpost in and say, okay, I'm going to do a program now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to double the number of sales for product X, or for the additional service, or for whatever. That's my goal. And put it up front before you do the coaching sessions, right?
So
and commit to it.
Yep.
Commit. Say, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to try. And eventually, if you don't double it, you just increase it by 50% or 80% or 60%, everybody will be happy because you did make a change. Yeah. And then the ROI discussion also becomes very clear because you say, this is the executive goal. Messaging goals for the company for this year, blah, 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 blah. Great. Here's how I, as a manager, translated these goals. I'm going to run these coaching sessions for my team. Yeah. Here's where we were last quarter. Here's where we are today with these specific KPIs that I coached for. So this thing works.
Yes. Yes. Really good. And I'll go. So in the chat room, David asked, getting buy-in from my ownership or exec team for the necessity of coaching. Ariel just gave you the answer. You just tie it right back to their own KPI, right? Like this is what, and then measure and then report. That's what you do.
Absolutely. I would start with theirs. I would start, hey, look, like Mr. Executive, in the last sales kickoff, you said that these are our 4 things. We're going to talk about the cloud or what have you. Here's how I translate this vision into tactics. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's the KPIs I'm going to go after. And let's measure that and put me accountable for it. So
yes, really good. Okay, let's hit a few of these questions if we can in our time remaining. Really appreciate y'all hanging with us today, like we said, and hopefully you're getting some very direct takeaways here. Let's go here. I'll go, how do I get people to make changes when they are busy? When they're busy, I have an easy, like find me a person that's not busy. One human, just find me, I know you, I got one, or doesn't think they're busy. Let's put it that way. Everyone's busy. Time is a silly argument. It's a ridiculous argument, right? It's a fixed thing that everybody's got. And so it's a matter of choice of time allotment. And to me, the preparation that you put into coaching without question is as or more valuable than the time that you spend playing the game. It is. And you just have to switch your mentality on that. That's my kind of short answer.
I'm right on with you. So like we started the session saying that the majority of the people here thinks that structured coaching plan could uplift the total number in 18%. Yeah. And you're too busy to make an impact that has 18% on your top line. What are you busy at?
Right. Think about losing 18% of your body weight if you're like me. I need to, I'm like, I'll do whatever that takes, right? Holy cow.
That's great. But just to pick up on the busy part, I think that part of it is part of the busy is sometimes coordination between different people. Even I think the triads is a good idea because it makes it easier to coordinate. I think that getting the help from a professional that comes in or from a sales enablement team to put in the groundwork, right? So organizations like SAP or like Zoom, they create the templates for these dialogues in advance, right? Yes. Whether you use it like to deliver it yourself as a coaching or whether you use someone like Jenny to do it for you, they create those templates for you. And then you'd say, okay, I identified that my team, there's 3 people, one of them has a challenge with selling this product or selling to this audience. Let me pick up the coaching scenario for that. Yep. Let's pick up the role play scenario for that. What's the background? What's the buyer needs? What should the rep uncover? And have that ready. If you have a smaller team and you have to do it by yourself, yes, it's harder, but there's a lot of good insights and templates that you can leverage to put that in, right? Yes. To turn that into a role play simulation.
I love it. He's going to stop saying role play, by the way, after this session, right?
I am going to stop saying
cuss jar.
Practice.
It's good practice. I'm telling you, it's a thing. Okay. Has anyone been able to create excitement for their sales team with coaching? Groans when it comes time to practice. I love this question. Do I say Marlena? I know she can unmute, or Marlenia. Such a pretty name. I love it. It's like Marlena. Anyway. So hopefully you've heard some things today that would make you think, okay, if I do it this way, it'll be different, exciting. Here's what I would encourage you to do though. Reward people during any practice session for screwing up. I don't care if you I take literally money out of my pocket in coaching sessions. I'll Venmo them $20. If they stop, they say something, they get lost. They're like, I'm totally lost. Time out. I don't know what to say. I'm like, you get $20. Thanks for being vulnerable and coming clean. It changes the whole dynamic of the thing. Don't let people burn. People get stuck. Like, you're stuck, aren't you? Like, no big deal. Okay, let's just like yoga breathe. Let's do it. Okay, let's all everybody give Ariel some cheering. Come on, Ariel. Yeah, okay. Now, and it changes the dynamic. Like, who wants? You're doing great, dude. Let's go. All right. So just change the dynamic of the whole thing. Reward people for doing it. Reward them for doing it right, which means they do screw up in the practice session. They do stop. They do rewind. And I think you'll create a practice culture. I've been doing sales coaching for 25 years. I've got 3 clients specifically out of 80 that I've been carrying a flag. I said, we are going to create a practice culture at these 3 clients, and we're 2 for 3. The third one's getting there, but it's great. And I've rewarded them. I said, you guys have done such a wonderful job embracing practice. I just can't tell you how cool it is. So now they just do it on their own, right? They're like, okay, Brian, can I go? I want to go. Okay, you be the buyer. Go. They just want to go. It's awesome. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. I think that changing culture is so hard. It's so hard. Kudos to you.
Well, it took a year.
That you've done it. Well, it took a year, but I think that the benefits would be substantial and enduring, because culture is a hard thing to change.
Yes.
I think that some of the tactics that worked on a short term, it's not as significant as changing the culture, is making it fun and giving a prize at the end. Yeah. And then also there's an aspect of group dynamics that we've seen work. So, yes. And we've seen that with Zoom, is that they created like a competition. Like, the coaching was scored because of the system. So the role play, the practice sessions were automatically scored. But then we didn't do a regular leaderboard. There was a question before that about leaderboard. We didn't do a regular leaderboard. We did like a team leaderboard. So they have a lot of people. And then and it was all like you with Jenny, and you're getting a score and whatnot. But if you're fucking up, then you're hurting your team, because it's the team score. You're all one team, and it's a team score. And they got nuts. Yeah. In a good way about it. Yes. Like, why did I get a 97? I got to get a 98. I got to get a 99. Yeah. They're doing it again and again and again and again. And the outcome was that they were that proficient with that story, with telling that story, with overcoming the objections, with asking the questions, because they were doing it again and again and again. Interesting. Because of the group dynamics. You want the team to win.
I love that. And Whitney, that kind of hits to your question, what Ariel just said. I love that team thing. Another thing to add to that, Whit, is if you want to think about, in the spirit of people support what they help create, ask the team to come up with their own goal, or at least have input in it. The other thing we just did here, we've got a little Q4 kind of like personal. So our CEO, Steph, not me, Steph's our CEO. She had all the sales team hand in something that they'd want to get for themselves to splurge on themselves. You know, like one picked a Golden Goose shoes, one wanted 2 tickets to Hawaii. And then we put some numbers in place. Say, if you get these things, we're going to buy them for you. And that becomes their own scoreboard. They actually have a little scoreboard on each of their desks that we printed out for them that has their own personal gift for it. Now, we've only got 3, but you can do a version of that. Something.
Absolutely. I just want to, I don't know if you have more time, but another question.
Let's do one more. Go ahead.
So one that came on from Patrick is the easiest way to figure out what measurements should be for understanding the effectiveness of coaching. Again, this is a hard one that goes back to the ROI. The only thing I would add that I don't think we've covered is that different metrics takes different time to manifest themselves. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking at, say, for example, SDRs, and what is the conversion from connect rate to booked meetings, you'll see the impact pretty fast, because this thing is very transactional. But if you're looking at enterprise sales with a 6-month sales cycle, and you're trying to make a change on the total deal sizes or the close or the win rates, it will take the 6 months to make an impact for you to measure. And I think that one way of thinking about that is just for every KPI that you're putting out there, think about when would it become apparent, whether it's participation rate, whether it's satisfaction rate, whether it's number of opportunities opened. You can track that, how many opened opportunities, and that's much faster than the closed one. Size of pipeline, weighted pipeline, win rates, close rates, new product sales, what have you. Just think about how long would it take for this KPI to materialize, and how can I create the momentum internally for this program with early KPIs, leading indicators, and lagging indicators later on.
That's great. Really, really great. All right, we're pushing time, aren't we? Yeah. You want to tell everybody how to get a hold of Second Nature? And
absolutely. So in order to get a hold of us, we're secondnature.ai. And Michelle did a nice slide for this. There you go. We're at secondnature.ai. I'll be happy to chat with anyone. I'm also on LinkedIn, Ariel Hitron. It's been such a great pleasure to be here and chat about these things, and it's so great to have the audience kind of on the chat, very active.
Wonderful. Love that. Love that. Love that. Same deal. You can do that email info@blind-zebra.com. You can also, I'm Brian at blind-zebra.com. If you want to put in the subject line, we run sales leadership peer groups similar to this in very small groups of people, always between 12 and 15 that are ongoing. And so if that's something like, be a peer group, that's interesting. You shoot me an email and I'll get you an invite to one of those to check one of those out if you want to do that. So on my dime. So that's it. Ariel, awesome, man. It's time for bed for you, isn't it? Close to it. Like
it's all good. Next time I'll be in a t-shirt, you'll be dressed.
Yeah, exactly. I'll wear a tie, I'll wear a tuxedo. Hey, everyone, like we said, thanks for your time and attention. It's really wonderful. We appreciate that. And hopefully you got some really good takeaways from that. Cool. All right, all. Have a good one.
Thank you all.
Thanks for your time again.